Hi friends, today we are going to see what is Lambda expression and how we can use that. And that said, Lambda expression was something that was introduced as part of Java 8, and then it has been there since then. And before we get into Lambda expression, we need to know why we need Lambda expression and why it was introduced and which we didn't need earlier. So the So fundamentally, we need to understand what is imperative way of writing program, and then what is a functional way. So that said, we'll into look into what is an imperative way of coding, and then the functional, and we need to understand the key difference between those. And once we have understood the difference, then obviously we know how lambda fills in the gap that is there in the imperative way of coding. So let me start with an example, so that way we can understand it better. So, before I start writing some program, I just want to introduce something called functional interface. So functional interface is nothing but an interface with a single abstract method. That's called functional interface. So in Java we have so many types of interfaces, like we have marker interface, we have functional interface, and then we have like a regular interface can have no multiple abstract methods, and then it needs a concrete class to give implementation for those. There are types, and so what we are going to see is functional interface. So as I have already mentioned, a functional interface is an interface which has only one abstract method, and so the why we are discussing about functional interface now is a functional interface implementation is what the lambda expression can take, and then it can give the implementation the runtime. And let's see with an example. So I have created an interface called my calculator. In this interface I am going to have a method public int calculate int I comma int j. So now this is a functional interface. The reason why it is a functional interface is it just have only one method. It has only one method, which is an abstract method, and this qualifies to be a functional interface. And before Lambda was introduced in Java, uh, whenever we 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 had to give an implementation for an interface, we could give implementation by a concrete class, that is nothing but in having a class, implementing an interface, and then giving a definition for that abstract method. And then the other way is we can also create an anonymous class, which can happen runtime, and then the implementation can be given as part of it. So let's see how it was done before Lambda was introduced, and then how it is being done with Lambda in place. So start with, let me create an instance of my calculator with runtime implementation using anonymous class. So now I have created an instance of my calculator, and this is an anonymous class where we have created the instance of it, and also we have given implementation to the abstract method. So this is how we used to do before Lambda was introduced. And if you look at it, uh, we have this portion, which is nothing but an instantiating the class, and then open braces, and then close braces with statement terminator, and then inside that we have an implementation for the abstract method, which has a method definition, and then the functionality, what it is doing. And so this is the complete code. So now in order to invoke the operation, we got to invoke the method, and operation dot calculate 2,3. So now what I have done is, using the instance of the class, I am invoking the method calculate inside the class. Let me print value on the console so that we can see it. So print 11. So let me run this now. Okay, so we have got the output. Add value is 5. We have passed 2 and 3, and then we have got the expected output. But look at here. So this is an imperative way of example. I mean the example of imperative way of coding. So we have got an anonymous class here, and look at this piece of line. Line number 8, line number 9, line number 11, and line number 12. These lines are basically dictating how we are implementing it. When I say how, I mean there needs to be an instance. This is how it needs to be created, and if you have to give implementation to the method, you have to write this line of code, and then you have to close the method, and then you have to close the the anonymous class. So this is not taking care of the actual functionality that we are doing here. The actual functionality that we are doing here is I plus j, the add operation that we are performing. So this part is what we are doing, and part of line 8 and then the whole line number 9, 11 and 12 is talking about how we are doing it. So this is an example of imperative way of writing the code, because it takes care of how we need to do and also what we need to do. But there is another thing that we also discussed at the beginning of the video, which is a functional way of doing. So the benefit of functional way of doing is to focus only on what we are doing and then not on how we are doing. So, and that is the advantage that we get using Lambda. So Lambda brings in that value where you will be focusing on what you are doing, not on how you are doing it. So let's take the same example here. So and as I have already said, Lambda expression is something that can work with the functional interface. So this is the interface that we already have, my calculator, which has an abstract method calculate, which takes 2 parameters, and then on the runtime, whatever the implementation that we give for that method, it is performed, and then the result is returned. So let me do the same thing using Lambda here. So the Lambda way of doing the same operation is like this. So we call it as add, since we already have add operation. So now we are going to write okay. I will explain about that in a bit. So this is the instance of it. Let me copy this and add value. So this is the instance of it, and I got to invoke the method calculate. Okay, type something else. Okay, I don't need this now. So let me invoke the method to from let's say chew. So let me run this, and then I'll explain you what is being done. So we have got the result. The one is add value 5, and then the add value using lambda is 4. So this might throw you off if you are seeing it for the first time, and I mean it will be little new for someone who has not got exposure to lambda. But anyways, it is simple. Let me explain you in parts so that way you can understand it. So look at here. This is nothing but the parameters for the method, and here what we are trying to do is we are trying to create instance and give implementation for the method calculate. So calculate method takes two parameter I and j. So this is the way to invoke it in lambda. So let me go with the syntax. So the first part is a parameter uh, one or multiple, and then the second part is an uh, arrow token, and the third part is the implementation. So if you look at it, this part is what the parameters, and this is an arrow token which says this needs to be invoked, and then the implementation. So what is being done here is, so the runtime we are just passing these two parameters, and then the arrow token takes a value of it and then passing it to the implementation. The implementation whatever has been coded here, that gets executed, and then the value is returned. So initially when you look at it, it might be a little confusing, but let me try to do the reverse engineering. So what is being done? So in this example, let me try to do it another way so it will help you. So here so this is what exactly it's happening here. So the value is added here, and then that is being returned. So these are nothing but the parameters to the method. So what we are trying to accomplish is we are trying to focus on the functional part rather than the how to do part. So look at here, these are the two parameters that we need. So we have just included here, and then we want to invoke some operation, and some operation needs to be performed with the input value. So that is what being done here. And look at it, this is also one way of doing lambda expression. So if your lambda implementation is going to have only one line, you don't need curly braces. You can remove the curly braces, and then if your method is going to return something, you don't have to mention the return either. It the the runtime, it will be figured out by the JRE that no, it needs to be returned. So it understands that no, whatever needs to be performed here, that will be performed, and then whatever is the output of it, that should be returned back. So this is the example of functional way of doing. So here we are focusing on what we are doing and not on how we need to do it. So when I say how we need to do it, look at the previous way of doing it. So we had this anonymous class, and then that anonymous class had this signature, method signature, and then it had the implementation, whatever needs to be done, the functional part, and then uh, the closing brace, and then the closing brace for the anonymous class. But here we are just focusing on what we need to do, but not how we need to do. When I say how, we don't have this piece of code and this piece of code, this piece of code and this piece of code, but we have something this, whatever we are doing. So this is the advantage that Lambda brings in. So the Lambda is a functional way of coding, and that will get rid of how something needs to be done. And this is the power of Lambda, and we can go on giving the implementation like this, and which will be clean and easy to understand. Initially these things may be a little confusing, but as you work on more and more examples, you feel comfortable with that, and it won't be confusing. So now the same example, I have given implementation for the subtract. All I need to do is I have to invoke the same thing with a different value. So let's say the subtract value of lambda is going to be, let me 5, and so let me run this and look at here. Uh, something is wrong. Okay, I did not pass the value to the subtract. Okay, so now it's giving you the exact value. Okay. Let's make it clear. Okay, let me run this. Okay, so this is what I wanted to see. This is the anonymous way of accomplishing the same thing, and this is the lambda way of performing the addition, and then again the subtraction part with lambda. So look at here. So this is very clear, and we are focusing on what we need to do, but not on how we need to do. So whatever we are trying to accomplish here with this 4 lines of code, we have accomplished that with 1 line of code here. And then let's say that you want to do subtract operation in an anonymous way, then obviously you would have another 4 lines of code. But here with the lambda, with the power of lambda, we have done the same thing with just 1 line of code, and we are focusing on what we are doing here, not on how we are doing it. So and in my future video I will give demo on how we can invoke the method that does not have any parameter, and that has single parameter, and then obviously we have already seen this example with the multiple parameters. And hope this would have helped you guys, and thank you for watching this video. Bye bye.